Hi, I'm Linda Martin, and I'm here today on the Safety Struggle Live with Philip Greisen. And Philip is from ProSafe Solutions and the Leaderthink podcast. And I'm so excited to have him here because the way I met Philip was that he called me up and I roughed him up on the phone a little bit. And And I think we've become friends. I think we're gonna become better friends as time goes along. But, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. And, I just Philip, if you would, can you just introduce yourself a little bit to the listeners and, tell them how we met and what you do for work?
Yeah, no problem. So I've been in the safety profession for 20 years now, and had the blessing of one of my first clients was working for the Navy doing culture assessment work, and at the same time I was learning all the regulatory OSHA stuff, but was also learning about culture. And the short version is I would interview the employee level, middle management, and upper management in a private room and ask them what they really thought about safety. And so that was the enlightening side of the safety profession, and been doing that for 20 years and love it. So really into leadership, which obviously ties into that culture word and all the human performance science we have today. Hey, meeting you though was, you talked about roughing me up, and I love that about you. That I think my best friends, they challenge thought, right? And I mean, the people that agree with me, it's like, okay, well, that's kind of boring, right? Let's challenge it, and that grows me. So I love that you rough me up. Rough me up today.
Okay, I'll try. I'll try. We're gonna go back to that conversation that we originally had on the phone. Um So I just wanted to mention too the Leader Think podcast. What kind of if people kind of transfer over, because most people who listen to podcasts listen to a lot of different podcasts. And so what is your genre with that? Is it all strictly safety or is it leadership too?
It's under the guise of safety, but leadership concepts you can translate into quality, production, being a spouse, being a parent, being a friend. So, although I translate the topics under safety performance and give those kind of examples, they're universal concepts.
Okay.
Yeah, just there
So
to
I could
help
probably learn
people
to be a
out.
better spouse, as you're telling me, if I listen. Boy, boy, I think my wife is going to be like, to put up that podcast with Philip Greisen, please, because you need to learn to be a better spouse. Parent, I think
Yeah,
I'm getting, but the spouse thing I can always learn. Um,
the
so
communication one would be a good one for you then. Right?
you mean
Good
I'm not supposed
communication
to
is
look at
nice
my
in a
phone
marriage.
and grunt, right? Not supposed to
Oh,
be like
that's
on my
right.
phone, grunt. Wait, what? Did you even hear what I said? Yeah, yeah. Can you say it again?
Yeah, put the phone
All right.
down.
So yeah, put your GD phone down. So I hope it doesn't offend you, but sometimes I let a few things slip when I get passionate. But I want to start off, if it's okay with you, I want to start off with culture, okay? Because as I told you before, culture is one of those words, especially in the safety realm, that I hear it from anybody, right? At a conference, within peers, having beers, anything, right? And I just go, "Ugh," right? Because I don't think, and I'm gonna take a wild stab. There's no research behind this. I don't think 95% of the people who spew this stuff about culture really know what they're talking about, right? They know about, oh, the culture comes from the top management, blah blah blah, right? But what is culture? What is culture? Because I think you have a decent handle on this because you teach it. And then we're going to talk about how it's created if you would humor me.
Okay. Yeah, culture isn't a slogan. It's not some sticker on a hard hat or some policy or really even the amount of budget you have. I love this term social proof that when people are unsure of the right thing to do or what a client requires of them or what the rules are on a job site, they tend to look around at what everybody else is doing and they follow suit. And that's culture. Is what is the unspoken expected behaviors of people in this plant, this job site. And since that's not on paper, it's inside of people, right? And people try to buy culture and buy some software or buy a consultant to get there, but it's inside of people, right?
Yeah.
And in this in the safety world, you're talking about creating culture that most Philip Atkinson says that most culture change efforts fail because people fail to address the emotional component of culture change. They look at all the rational technical stuff like there's not enough access to PPE, so let's buy another vending machine or something like that. But it's why did that exist? Why were it's all the frustration, emotion of why can't I get to the PPE? That's what culture is really about. And that's what you have to engage is the emotion, right?
Right.
And if you took something like human performance, it's the same thing that why do decisions make sense to people that safety people perceive as at-risk behavior? Well, there's an emotional component there that tells the story. And, cultures, are we willing to engage that emotion, right? Or is it
Yeah.
check your feelings at the door, like some people say? And if you can engage that and sympathize with it, that's what creates culture, is a somewhat short gray
Yeah.
explanation.
So there's no crying in construction, right? There's no emotion. Check. When you come to the job site gate, I don't want to hear about it. Just do your damn job, and let's get on with things. But um, you know, that that's not the sites that are successful, right? The sites that are successful are the people that actually walk onto the job site. And I'm saying people, let's say safety professionals, right? And they walk onto the job site and they give a shit. Okay. And I have a lot of safety professional friends and colleagues and students, and they say, I give a shit. But do they really give a shit about the emotional well being of the worker, right? They give a shit that they don't get hurt, right? And they give a shit that they go home to their families, and they give a shit about all that. But do they really give a shit about what the core is that makes that worker tick, right? And that's different for everybody. And so
That's right.
how how do you connect those? And I'm going to use an analogy I usually I use it for a lot of things. I use it about how you connect with the universe and etc. But how do you connect those cores of the workers in a meaningful way, right? Who does that? Who connects it in a meaningful way? Well, safety has a role in threading that needle, right? And supervisors have a role in threading that needle, and so does management. So, you can't say management commitment because I, I don't buy it, right? And we had this discussion before that the only places that I see that can really make a difference in culture are those that are, and here I'm gonna start the shit fight, those that
Okay.
are family owned, like Chick-fil-A or Hobby Lobby, right? Where their values are, um, they trickle down through the whole company, and and they're privately owned, and they can do that, right? When you start getting into big multinational corporations, um, I just don't see the trickle down effect. I think there's too far from the CEO's office to the job site. So what say you, Philip Greason, to that?
Okay, so you are right, and I disagree with you at the same time, right? That even like the Chick-fil-A example, that yes, their upper leadership has a operating philosophy that trickles down to every franchise, but every franchise is its own island too, right? And
Mhm.
it's funny that the Chick-fil-A thing, because I was using that analogy just last week, and someone was telling me about a bad franchise experience that they were having. So even with everything the Kathy family is doing, you can still have that subculture of a specific franchise that bucks the system and doesn't adopt that culture, right? And the reverse is true as well. So you can have the big global multi-nation entity, but they've got some little region or plant over here in Chattanooga, and they are their own subculture. And so they still have the power to create their own subculture in their little island. And there's you make me think of Max Dupree, how he says that the first job of a leader is to define reality. And sometimes reality is not pleasant. And so maybe the corporate giant doesn't get what you get as far as understanding how safety works. But just because they're my corporate entity and they've limited how much budget I have, doesn't mean I don't have power to do what I can do with what I've got, right?
Right.
And that's the biggest problem in our world today is people always argue against circumstances, and they spend the majority of their time talking about what they can't do. And you notice when people talk, are they talking about what they can do with what they have, or are they spending most of their time saying, I can't do anything because of XYZ? You got to focus on the solution instead of the problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'll pull this out. Somebody said to me the other day that, one of the other podcasters has a book and it's called Safety Sucks, right? By the hop nerd, Sam Goodman. Right. And, he makes some really good points in his book. He really does. And I'm plugging his book because safety does suck. Right. But what's the solution? What's the solution? And we also talked about this on a podcast that I did as a pay-per-view. And, we talked a lot about what's wrong with the system. But Jay Allen said, hey, stop talking about what's wrong and somebody jump in here and change it. Okay. And so, and here's another one of my dislike words, right? Thought leader. But I'll use it in this context. Some kind of thought leader needs to get in there, or at least somebody who's very positive, and they don't think about what they can't do, and all they do is think about workarounds. The MacGyver of safety, right? How do I make this happen with no budget, no support, and no pocket knife and match and whatnot? So, I don't know. I mean, I think you have a really good point about people being positive, right? Talk about what you can do. What can we do? I mean, what in your different leadership seminars that you give and courses, what can we do to change the way we think?
One is that solution-based thinking that just people love to vent and they're frustrated and they need to vent. Like we were talking about earlier, there's that perception, especially in construction, that feelings are weakness, right? Showing feeling is perceived as weakness. But at the same time, some of those same people tell me this is a bunch of adult daycare. And okay, so we can't talk about feelings, but you can talk about the feeling of frustration all day long, right? I mean, we can vent, we can bitch about stuff, and that feeling's okay. But what you're struggling with over here is what we can't talk about, and it's a paradox, right? I mean,
Right.
Feelings do matter. People respond to the feeling of risk more than the science. You can take COVID and you'll have people say a mask doesn't work, right? Okay. Why do they say that? Because it's their feeling of their perception of risk. Now, give me a handful of flour and let me throw it at your face and tell me a mask doesn't work, right? Okay. But the science doesn't matter. It's their feelings that matter. And so that's what we've got to target. And the big problem, I think, is that on one hand, we're going around saying that check your feelings at the door. Feelings are a sign of weakness. And then that's preventing us from engaging the feelings that help us learn how to make safety better, right? We got to engage those feelings, and people are usually not equipped for doing that. You know, most of the time, here's one for your spouse. Okay, most of the
Marriage
time, your
Counseling by
wife
Philip
tells,
Greisen.
yeah, that's right. We're getting the marriage counseling. You know, most of
Awesome.
the time, your wife tells you her feelings. Let's say what she's struggling with, and then you respond with, "Well, here's what you need to do," and we give advice, and that's never what they even asked for. What they want you to do is sympathize with them,
Yeah.
right? That's what they want.
Yeah.
And same thing with safety performance. Like, somebody will be standing on the rails of a scissor lift, and then we go out there and tell them you can't do that. Duh, you think they didn't know that already? You think that they didn't know that they can't stand on the rails of a scissor lift? That's normal, right? Everybody knows that. But why are you standing on the rails of the scissor lift? Because I got to get the job done, and I said I needed something different. Nobody even asked me about it, right?
Right. Right.
Might have lost you here,
S
Linda.
I know. I lost you there for a second. So, you know, my takeaway, listen, I heard nothing that you just said for the last 2 minutes, except for the except for the thing about throwing flour in people's faces and I'm thinking, like, later on, I'm going down to Walmart, and I'm gonna take a 5-pound bag of
Heck yeah. Get the bag of flour. Get the bag of flour. Okay.
So, you know, I mean, anyway, so I mean, that's a good point, right? I mean, so you got a site of 100 workers that nobody talks about their feelings, right? And how do you cultivate that? Or do you have a client that cultivates that, and how does he or she do that?
Yeah, you know, one, you don't use the word feelings. All right. We
Yeah.
use that behind the scenes in private offices, right? But we never use those words out there you know, I love the Decker a statement of Sidney Decker, and just our goal is to find out why behavior makes sense to people, and usually frustrations behind it. So we're standing on top of the step ladder because I'm put in a circumstance where I don't have access to a better way, right? And so I need to go out there and engage with that worker, and I need to find out why that at-risk behavior makes sense. Now, here's the thing: they're not going to say, "Oh, thank you for asking me that question." They're
Get
gonna
the fuck
spit
out of
on you, right?
get the fuck
Yes,
out of here, guy.
yeah, they're gonna go, "Well, I've been telling them for 6 months that I needed a one-man lift, and they overscheduled this job, and they got 6 subs stacked on top of me. And so what you need to do is take all the spit as it's on your face and just use it as a listening thing to learn, and then take that info and go do something with the system," right? And so
Yeah. Yeah.
you gotta take the egg on the face.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't wanna do that. They wanna, you know, um, accused people defend themselves, right?
Mhm.
And that goes both ways. So if I accuse the worker as being inferior because they're on the step ladder or the rails of the scissor lift, they're just going to defend their position, right? But the same can be said on safety. When I go out there and try to defend why you don't have the right equipment or why we have an overly aggressive schedule, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
And so,
Listen,
although
man,
I
what do
know
you want
other
me to do?
people,
We don't have the money. We don't have the money for a one-man lift. And, you know, so we're gonna have to figure this out. People think that's a solution, right? I'm working with this person to figure out a solution, but they don't want to hear that. They they want to event and be heard, right? And sometimes instead of the safety person defending themselves or the budget or the productivity or whatever, um, perhaps they need to bring the solution the next time they come out there, and maybe they won't get spit on.
yeah, and you know, and our original purpose as safety people was to be advisors, right?
Mhm,
Not fire putter outers, which is
mhm.
what we've become in this profession. Is like, how many times do you hear where the worker says to the safety person, "Tell me what I'm supposed to do"? Wrong way of thinking. I need to go to the worker and say, "What does great look like?" And try to do as much of that, of what they think is the right thing. but I'm not supposed to tell them how to do it. I'm supposed to pull out of them my understanding of what they think is the right thing to do,
Yeah.
and combine that with upper and middle management and come up with some solution that, we're not in unicorn world with the safety profession. We're polishing turds, right? And that's what we need to do, is polish the turd. Can I get 50% better? I think I'm losing you here, Linda.
You talked a little bit about behavior, right? And I think this kind of goes to the behavior. This uh, fill it back. I'll bring him into the filter. So I was Philip, and I
Hey,
do. Oh, there he is. I don't know if that's your connection or my connection. I'm seeing very clear on this side.
I just swapped to a different connection to see if it would make it better. So let me know if
There you
this is.
are. I mean, you connect. So I tried to riff it by myself, but you just my jaw dropped when you said we're out there polishing turds, right? And I think to some respect we are, right, that we do the best with what we can, but I think we can do better when we take it back to middle management or management and articulate why things need to change or why things need to improve or have money, whatever. That this idea, we work a lot with the school, right? We're learning technical skills of confined space and excavation, how to work in industry and relations. We learn a lot about that kind of stuff at school. Where is a curriculum that teaches us how to be in this world, right? In this world with the worker. And I think I lost you again. Hey y'all, sorry for the interruption here. Trying to get Philip back on the line. You there, Philip?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. This is gonna make for a great podcast. I'm not so
That's
sure of
right.
live stream if we're gonna let it live on YouTube. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I guess I was talking a little bit about before I lost you this time. Um, we talk a lot about the technical aspects of what we learn in school.
Oh my goodness, man.
Waiting on Philip. Oh, I see you, Philip. Can
I
you hear?
have no idea what's going on.
That's okay. That's okay. It's live, right? Live is good. People get to see that we can't deal with life sometimes, and that's okay. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It is going Battlestar Galactica Cylon on me a couple times
Yeah, I
here.
feel
So
like maybe are you one of 7? Is it one of
maybe I
7?
am.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. I'm one of
And
7.
your whatever you are is interfering with the live stream. So I'm gonna say it for
Yeah.
the 3rd time, right? So we were talking about communication. Oh, there you go. You're gone.
I was just stopping the camera to see if it would help with the connection here, you know?
So I think where a lot of things fall apart. Okay, for the 3rd time, I'm gonna tell you this. I think where things fall apart is that we learn to be the person who polishes the turds. We're the person who we're taught in school how to fix it. We're taught in school or training courses, how to see what's wrong, how to tweak the system so it's technically correct or it's regulatorily correct, right? But we miss the boat when it comes to um, learning how to communicate with people
That's
and
right.
being in this world, right? And nobody can teach you how to be in this world. This is my value judgment, okay? Nobody can teach you how to be in this world but your parents and your peers, right? So if we were to change the curriculum somehow or to institute some sort of training to teach people how to be in this world so that they'd be better safety professionals, what would it look like?
You know, I hate to use the term soft skills because it's kind of lame, but that is what people struggle with, that those softer skills, the emotional intelligence and all that, and how to influence people, how to communicate. We don't do a good job of that in our current society. And that is what we need to teach people about. But training classes are a one and done, right? I mean,
Mhm.
what we're going to remember 5 to 15% of whatever the heck, and then we're going to lose you again here.
No, I
And
hope
then,
not.
did you come back, Linda?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
I'm here for you.
Okay. And then, it's a personal journey. Okay. It's a personal journey. You have to take the initiative yourself to get better with the emotional intelligence. And if we're not willing to do that ourselves, then yes, it's going to fail. I always say the number one trait of a leader, regardless of title, is personal growth. You can ask them, what are you learning about right now that I should learn about? And they're going to have an awesome answer to that. But if
Mhm.
we're not taking the time to learn something new, go fail our way into success trying it in the real world, then we're not going to get better. So there's the key is we can introduce people to topics, but they have to be willing to go try them out and fail their way into succeeding with them in the real world. That's where the rubber
Okay.
meets the road. What are you going to do with the information?
So here's the thing, right? Most people, not most people, some people in our profession have certifications, right? And they need to grow, professionally develop, right? They're forced to do it almost because in order to renew your certifications, you have to get so many courses or so many points or whatever, right? And people are offering things that, or they're taking things that don't make them grow, right? They take another course on confined space, or they put in 8 hours for a HAZWOP refresher, or they, um, uh, they do something like that as opposed to taking an emotional intelligence course or a mindfulness course, or, and I'm not even sure if those courses would be allowed as professional development in our field. And I think it's valid that if somebody wanted to learn to be a better safety professional, that would be a component of the professional development requirements, right? or we would see more people speaking on the topics and more people going to the topics than learning again how to go through a risk matrix again. Um,
Right.
so that
You know,
bothers me a little bit.
well, yeah, it bothers me too. I've never made $1 off any letters behind my name. Nobody ever hired me because of that stuff, and I still pay the dues every year, right? And then I
Right,
pay the dues to meet the certification requirements of the other dues I got to pay, and
right,
and but you know, it's a cliche thing, but the power's inside of you, right? I've known CSPs that were dumb as a rock, and I've known CSPs that I have a lot of respect for, right? The
absolutely.
letters don't matter, the person matters. And it's that problem of looking outward toward the world and saying, you tell me that I'm worth something. That's the wrong way to think. I need to look inside and say, I am worth something, and here's what I'm going to do to make myself better than I was yesterday. And so, like the comment about the emotional skills, I don't think the answer is to is to get one of those big entities to require emotional intelligence courses. I think the answer is that I need to tell myself what I need to do here.
Right.
And it is the personal decisions I've made to increase my self-awareness that have really gotten me a lot more work, right? The
Mhm.
money came from personal choices, not anything outside of me. And we need to get better at teaching people that the answer's inside of you. I get people all the time at Georgia Tech, and I teach a lot of the OSHA Training Institute courses, and they say, Philip, what class do I need to teach next to do what you do? And that's not the answer.
Right.
The
Right.
answer is, what are you doing to grow your own wisdom? Because
Right.
if you're a trainer, I got to communicate, right? If I want to if I want to influence people, I need to get better at that. There's not the one size fits all course. It's the constant path of, I am always growing.
Mhm.
And I'll have people say this too. They'll say, "Hey, Philip, give me your PowerPoint so I can teach your stuff." And I'm like, really? These are
I get that a
bullet
lot.
points that are for me. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like, I'll notice this, even like the PowerPoints, I'll see people that they spend 6 months coming up with the PowerPoint they're going to teach, and then it's a one and done. They're going to teach that for the next 6 years straight.
Ugh.
Uh, I need to be
Welcome to
modifying.
brick and mortar education, right?
That's right.
It's still
That's
relevant.
right.
I did this 20 years ago. It's still relevant now. No, it's not.
No,
It's not.
it wasn't relevant a week later, right?
That's right.
If
Exactly. Exactly.
you know,
So
John Maxwell says this. He says that, I hope that whatever your best stuff from 5 years ago looks small to you through today's eyes. And it's back to that growth thing, that I never need to arrive. I need to get the dopamine hit from being on the path of doing the work. And most people
mhm,
don't think that way. They get the dopamine hit when they achieve the goal. That's actually terrible for you. I need
mhm.
to get the dopamine hit from the jog, not from the
Yep.
the pounds I lost on the scale a week later, right?
Yeah.
I need to get
Yeah.
excited about doing stuff and growing.
Yeah. So I think that there's another component to that, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will. But some people, they don't know what's inside themselves until somebody touches them, right? Um, you know, uh, for lack of a way of putting it, I'm sure that I'll have people who are very religious not like this, but somebody needs to lay their hands on other safety professionals in a meaningful way and say, it's right here. You have this. You have this, right? And I think, there's this focus on quote unquote mentoring, right? We're going to get you in a mentoring program, right? And people call each other once a week, or they check in and they give them little tips on how to, like, um proceed in their work or their profession or their field. But nobody's shooting those dopamine arrows into their heart and their mind to say, go forth and grow, right? Go forth and grow, and you can do this, right? Don't be me. I don't want people to be Linda Martin. And I'm sure you don't want people to be Philip Grayson, right? You want people to surpass, right, what you've done. And in fact, I will help them. I'm gonna push them so hard that they're gonna be a little off balance, but at least they'll go at a run. And so, the other component to that, finding that dopamine hit to learn, is sometimes somebody hitting you with that dopamine arrow and saying, "You can. You can,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Enough of this archaic bullshit that we spew at the organizational level, or people who take our money for this and that and the other thing, but let's save our money for the dopamine arrows and, create a
That's
better
right.
generation.
And I'm sure some people will disagree with this, but most people don't really have someone that really believes in them. Most people, all they hear is what they're doing wrong, and so that diminishes their passion for growth and changing and growing. We have to let people know that we believe in them, and it's got to be sincere. Not the lame good job, but pointing
You
out their
can.
previous successes, right? Here's no, here's where you have done great things before, and then that encourages them to believe in themselves, right? But a lot of people don't even have their spouse at home isn't really believing in them and supporting them. So we've got to genuinely believe in people. And then the other thing is aim for B minus work, right? That I need to get for real. It's like this perfectionist crap of
Yep.
I'll start when I've got the A level. No, that is not how life works. If you have that, I'm going to wait till I'm A. You will never get anything done. I need to go deliver B minus work, knowing that is teaching me how to become an A in whatever that subject matter is. And
Mhm.
just go do it. And it's I love how Brooke Castillo says it. She calls it failure proof, that she's not failure tolerant. She's failure proof. She's just accepted that failure is how you go from the B minus to an A. Maxwell says it similar, that failure and success are completely intertwined with each other, that we need to embrace that failure. It's a
Mhm.
good thing, right? And not be
Mhm.
afraid of it. Got to go out there and try it. Fall on your face. That's a good
Yeah.
teachable moment, right?
Get somebody to punch you out and stuff you in a hole, and then you'll know next time to say it differently, right? Hopefully say it differently to
That's
that
right.
person. Um, so I'm gonna switch gears here and talk about communication, because I think this is intertwined, right? And one of the quotes that you gave me, in some of the talking points, was, "People think 600 words a minute, but speak 100 words a minute." So, can you explain how you weave that into your presentations and into some of your um, leadership seminars?
Yeah. I'm going to give you some marriage counseling. All right. Or maybe give myself some.
Oh,
But
man, you
so,
know what? The people are gonna view this like crazy later. They're gonna be like, "Wow, Linda Martin is a mess. She is a." Well, actually, they know Linda Martin's a fucking mess anyways, so
yeah.
this will not be surprising. So just go
Uh,
ahead. Marriage
so
101.
been married to my wife for what, 14 years now, and I'm was thinking we're both in our 40s, and I don't buy her the flowers and write her the poems like I used to, and I need to get better at telling her that she's beautiful, right?
Mhm,
Because I used to do it all the time, and so I'm having those 600 thoughts per minute about how I need to do that more often, tell her how beautiful she is. And so I walk up to her and I say, "Shannon, you are just beautiful." And she responds with, "What do you want?" Because all she heard were the words,
right,
right?
right.
And I hear that so often. Like, here's one. Uh, this is a 100% tie-off job. And those are the only words we say, and we don't think that all the thoughts matter. And now all the workers are like, "These stupid safety people want you to tie off on a ladder." No, they
Mhm.
don't.
Mhm.
What they meant was, I don't care about all those regulatory exceptions for fall protection. I want to do a blanket 6 or 4 foot policy. And even then, there's going to be times where the guardrail personal fall arrest stuff doesn't work out, and we'll do some exception. But we don't say the words.
Right.
With all the thoughts. We just say those short words. And communication's hard. You got to say things over and over again in different ways for people to get it. And we
Right.
fail to do that with fancy stickers on hard hats that never tell the full story, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I have stickers for the hard hats that says the safety struggle, which I think is the full story.
Okay, there's a
I
good,
think that's the
hey,
full
we
I
used
think
to
that's
have
the full
some
story
too,
of
but
everything that we do, right, is a struggle. And I
yeah.
so I'm glad you explained that, because I think a lot of times we tend to, everybody's rushed, right? On a big site or a big building project, or even in a manufacturing, you're just in time manufacturing, you're always in a hurry to get things out the door, right? And so you have just enough time to walk the floor or walk the site, spew whatever slogans or things that you need to say that day, and you have to spend the time to stop and say, we're 100% tie off site, but let's talk about your situation, just real quickly, right? Let's talk about what you're doing right now. And that means a ton, right? Because that worker is going to say at lunchtime, hopefully at lunchtime, they're going to say, wow, Linda Martin came and she actually had a 5-minute conversation with me about, this 100% tie off thing. And she gave me this information that I can pass to you. Right. And, um, and then maybe they start to,
100% anything is crap. Okay, 100% anything is crap. It really is.
yeah,
It's the thinking that's wrong. Because and look here, it was a good idea. It all seemed like a good idea through the eyes of, well, OSHA will let this steel erector get up 30 feet in the air before personal fall arrest. So let's have this 100% rule, and it sounds good, but like, here's the 100% hard hat rule, right?
yeah, yeah,
You got to wear a hard hat. Have you ever put a hard hat on and changed a kitchen sink? And tell me that that's a good idea to put a hard hat on, get in that sink cabinet upside down, and tell me how that's helping me.
yeah,
And construction especially is dynamic. The
yeah,
last thing we need to do is go through this philosophy that there's a rule that will always work in a dynamic industry. It won't.
yeah,
And
yeah,
but people, why people do that? It's feel goods. We call it feel good safety policy.
yeah,
Anytime you have 100%, that feels good in your office, but it will
yeah.
never work in the real world.
So the 100% hard hat rule, that I've heard this said many times, right? It's easier to say 100% hard hat rule than it is to talk about the exceptions, right?
Yeah,
Because
it's easier
then,
and it's weak,
right? Yes, I totally agree,
right?
right? 100%
Right?
hard hat rule. And we have I used to be a safety director for a crane company, right? And so there were a lot of overhead hazards. So we had pretty much 100% rule, but not always, right? But we'd go on contract sites for like power utilities, right? And they're 100% hard hat rule. And I would say to the guys, I understand. I 100% agree with you that there are no overhead hazards here. However, the client is
Oh, here we go.
not gonna let us, I mean, so yeah, I mean, if it was our site and we were with a client that had some foresight into the fact that 100% is ridiculous, then I would agree with you. But here I can't. I I I, I don't have power,
Okay.
right?
Okay. All right. Let's look at root of all of this is we have this philosophy that we need to tell people what to do.
Mhm.
What we need to do is teach people how to think.
Mhm.
And we don't do a good job of that, especially in safety. We're all good. Here's the rule: thou shalt obey no matter what. When you were speaking, I was thinking about this tagline rule. And every time I teach rigging, I use it this way: that we have a policy here that thou shalt use a tagline 100% of the time, even when it's a bad idea, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's stupid. But at root of that is teaching people how to think. So just like your example with the client, what we do is, well, yeah, the rule's dumb, but we're going to do it anyway because the client said so. Did anybody say, hey, you know what? Let me go get some egg on my face with the client and go try to teach them, or at least talk to them, why their rule actually just makes no sense at all. It's a bad idea and will get people killed in certain
Mhm.
scenarios. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's just an ergonomic issue if my head's in the kitchen sink with a hard hat on, but the tagline thing could kill somebody, right?
Mhm.
And so we fail to go educate the client. You know what the client is? They're clueless. Usually the client does not have the deep understanding we have. And
Yeah.
so we need to start that. They think what they're doing is a good idea. That they think
Mhm.
it's a good idea. And so I need to
Mhm.
go start out with, look, I know the world's telling you all this, but most safety people are crazy. And here's why that rule is actually a terrible idea. And if they have half a brain, they'll get it. And even
Mhm.
if they don't get it in the conversation, I guarantee you when they're driving home, they'll process that with their prefrontal. They'll think about it a little bit and they'll see a little truth to what you're saying.
Mhm.
And so, will I change them today? Maybe not. But if I don't start that process of trying to educate them to the deeper truth, then I'll never get there. But if I try, maybe 6 months from now on the next job, they'll be a little bit more flexible, right? Aim
Mhm.
for the B minus work, get 50% better, not unicorns and rainbows, right? We're still
You
polishing a
know,
turd.
actually, I've had better luck on actual sites between safety professional to safety professional about why things need to be different, right? Especially in the lifting industry, right? Um, because I have the people there who have the knowledge to help back me up, right? Some of the tradespeople that I've worked with in my life are hella smarter than I am, especially at what they do, right? I, I I know very little about rigging and lifting, but they know a lot. And so if I stand there with them as they describe and I validate, I've had good luck with that on site. It's when it goes to the upper echelons of people who sit in offices and write JSAs and then push them down to the field and they make no sense whatsoever, right? So
Amen.
there's a difference there, right? I mean, I, I think hearts and minds are changed one on one, like you said, which is kind of what you're alluding to, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
You casting, I'm right again. I'm right again. Woo! Um, I use this analogy a lot. I mean, I have a quiver of arrows, right? And some of them are truths, some of them are just little pieces of thought to think about for later. And I wish there were more people that thought that way in the safety profession, especially older set like me, that instead of trying to make somebody like myself that plants seeds for the future, right? How do we want this to look? How do we want, do we want to be emotionally intelligent advisors? Or do we want to be safety cops? And as much as some people say they're not safety cops, they're safety cops, right?
Right.
100% tie up rule. Get out of that lift. Don't do that. Put your hard hat on, right? And then they go, "I'm not a safety cop. I love the guys. I know them by name." It's like, "Yeah, but your methods haven't changed, right?"
Yeah.
So, practice what you're saying as opposed to, what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so one, I'm guilty of creating this problem too. So, when I started in safety, I used to preach to everybody that we needed consistent discipline to show OSHA that it's not us, it's the worker that's the problem when they come on site. And I used to go say all those things. So
Mm.
I am guilty of being one of the messengers teaching the wrong thing, right?
We all are.
Um, yeah, and so now we got to go fix that mess. Now the other part is there is an insecurity there. Okay. When I was thinking about that crazy meme that, I have no idea how to do your job, but my book says you're doing it wrong. And it's so true that I will never have the knowledge, like your lifting example. I will never have the knowledge of flying bundles of rebar or conduit all day that somebody who does that does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
the first step is I need to admit I have no idea what you know. I know all this safety stuff. I might know this leadership stuff, but I don't know what you know. And teach me something.
That's
And
called
we don't
humility.
do that. Oh, yeah. But we don't do that because of insecurity. And then we're placed in this role like the safety profession. Here's the rules, go make them follow it. And we never teach them all this stuff that you and I are talking about. And so then there's this insecurity that may not be spoken of because I walk up to the guy and I'm supposed to tell him he's doing it wrong. But technically, I know in the back of my mind, he knows some stuff I don't know. And so that
Right.
insecurity kind of promotes the safety cop thing. Now, if I looked at this at just the opposite of what the world says, everybody's got a sign hanging around them that says "Make me feel important." Why is Facebook and Twitter so popular? The friggin' like button, right? So go give them a like button, right?
Yep.
Say, oh,
Yep.
go give them a little hand
Put that
clap
on
that
their
you
hard
know
hat.
this, and I want you to, yeah, yeah,
You know,
teach
like
me
football.
that
You know, like
stuff.
football. Like every time they get a touchdown or a catch or whatever, they get the little football on their helmet. We should go around with little like stickers, right? Just then some asshole would come along and say that we covered it up too much and it doesn't comply with the OSHA, the ANSI regulations for hard hat, that it can't be inspected. But I'm gonna get
Right,
myself a bunch of
right.
like stickers now. So
Okay, all right,
that's what I
yeah.
took from
You gotta
that.
go talk.
That's all
Yeah.
I got from that, Phil.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They all know. Everybody knows something I don't know. Everybody knows something I don't know. And if I pretend any different, then that's my own insecurity talking, right?
Yeah.
But Linda, a couple times that you've been mentioning this change, and I think that when people are suffering, that's when they're ripe for change. So whenever somebody's frustrated, it's an opportunity for a meaningful change. When
Mhm.
somebody says, "I've been doing the same thing over and over again for 100 years," then they're ripe for change. And in our industry, I think we're ripe for change. 20 years ago, I remember it was what was it? It was like 5,000 dead people a year in the workplace, 1,000 in construction. And the only thing that changed was the economy throughout 20
Mhm.
years, but
Mhm.
we're still 5,000 dead people every year. And that tells us that we have not made a meaningful change.
Right.
In 20 friggin' years, we have not made meaningful change. And so we are ripe for changing our whole philosophy about what safety is. It's not
Yeah.
100% rules. It's engaging the worker. They are not inferior. They are actually superior because they know stuff we don't know. And I need to get good at influencing them and learning from them. Right.
Right.
But we don't that thought
But we
isn't
do
promoted very well.
and it's not in, so I'm not gonna say all educational programs, but some programs, they do teach the same thing that they taught 20 years ago, and they think it's still relevant, and it's not. And people who've actually been practicing in the field, that sometimes do adjunct work, give the best instruction in the academic programs, right? It's not I'm sorry to the people who are tenured and who are doing this 30, 40 years, but the adjuncts who are walking the walk and talking to the people in the field are actually giving better instruction and better advice to the young people who are coming in after them. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, you know, we talk a lot about we haven't changed in 100 years, right? But we have, like certification bodies who every 5 years they up their exam. They review what's on their exam and what's important to people, and those soft skills are starting to show up on the blueprint, right? So, I think our professional development should be following the blueprints that we're asking people to look for certification, but we should also be, in some way, um, maybe the membership organization should be doing this. They should be polling the people who are doing the work, and then not creating something else on confined space and not creating something else on ISO 45001, which I think is way less important than um, communication skills, leadership skills, having
Yeah.
that fire, valuing people, humility, etc.
You know, we've had conversations about the certification bodies, and I don't know how to change them, but I definitely know how to change me. And I
Hmm.
definitely know what I can do and say. So I say all those things. Yes, yeah, all the communication, soft skill stuff you're talking about, that is where what you really need to know to be successful in this world. Um, but just like the human performance thing, everything's a system, right? And so if I blame the certification body, really they're a system, right? They have people saying, they're sitting in some boardroom saying, what do you have to do to reauthorize over here? And I have no idea what the conversations are, but I know what the decisions they're making make sense to them, even if I don't get it. If I don't
Yeah,
understand it, it makes
true.
sense to them. So to change that's what I need to know. I need somebody to teach me that. I need to be a fly on the wall in there to get that. All right.
Well, I
So in the
have been in those
meantime, I'm gonna
boardrooms,
go
and I
preach the
can't tell
truth.
you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you would know. Yeah, you would know. So you have
I,
that answer already, don't
I
you?
do have that answer, but I'm not allowed to give it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
um, so Philip, what else do you want to talk about today on this I mean, I could just go on and on. Maybe we should make this a thing. We should have like a
Maybe we should make it a thing.
monthly leader think safety struggle live stream. I mean, I
I
enjoy
love it.
talking to you. And I mean,
I
that's
love
really
it.
up to you. I mean, I've got the time. All I do is sit at home and think of
Yeah.
things to do. Um well, I do have a job too. But let's talk before we leave. Let's talk about coaching, right?
Okay.
And what are your ideas for coaching of other professionals, from the standpoint of you're somebody who um, I would consider to be an enlightened person, right? And enlightened, not like, oh, you know everything, but but you're enlightened enough to know what you don't know, right? And motivated enough to go and seek it. So how do we ignite that? How do we coach that in our peers and young people?
One, the younger generation is we're actually prime for major change because they buy into a lot of that emotional intelligence stuff a lot better than older generations. And I think it's just a lot of, coming from surviving World War II to things have been somewhat peaceful, that are as a culture, we're buying more into that. People are more primed and ready for it. So that's a good thing. The coaching thing is I always think about how a lot of people don't even get what coaching is, and I didn't either. I used to teach the opposite of what I'm about to tell you, but I used to think that coach. Well, yeah, I did it wrong first, right? That's the B
Yep.
minus work. Um,
Yep.
I used to think coaching was giving people advice in the form of a question. That I'm just going to be nice at the shit sandwich, as a
Is
lot of
this like
people say,
a
right?
reflective? Are you going to say you did reflective listening? Well, how
Well,
do you?
no, I mean just that people needed suggestions on and could pick from 1, 2, 3 like a cafeteria plan or
That's
something,
called guided
but
decision making.
yeah, coaching, that's right. It's guiding
The
them, right?
The
Coaching.
Girl Scouts use it at Girl Scout camp, right? The 5-year-olds get 2
Okay.
things to choose from, the 10-year-olds get 3 things, and by the time they're 15, they can choose their own program. So it's guided decision making. So sorry,
Okay.
I
Well,
interrupted you. I
yeah, no,
apologize.
not coaching though, right? Yeah, I was Cub Scouts, but not the Girl Scouts, but ate a lot of cookies. Um, so coaching is getting people to think better, and it's back to that thing that same concept we had earlier, that the world's telling us what to think, not how to think. And that's what we really want. We want people to come up with their own solutions, right? And like something else you said earlier, you don't want to make a bunch more Lindas. You want something different and something better. And so that's the whole point of coaching, that I want you to be your own thing, right? And whatever style I have there, it doesn't matter what I know, there will be people that just don't relate to my style, and that's
Yep.
normal. And so if somebody else can like learn that communication thing we were talking about, they could deliver it in a total different style that more people could relate to. And so that's what I want. I want people to get good at being themselves, being authentic. And
Right.
so can they think better? You know, what's the solution for them? So for example, you said you don't read books. I read books. Maybe you're a podcaster. Maybe that style, maybe watching YouTube videos, maybe something like
Right.
that is a way that Linda grows and educates herself that's totally different than Philip's. And there's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. So I don't need to go tell somebody you need to read this book. It would be the dumbest thing I could ever tell them. I could say, okay, well, some people read books, some listen to audiobooks in their car, some listen to podcasts, some watch videos on YouTube. But instead of just consuming information, can you make it part of your life?
Mhm.
Right. And
Mhm.
so if I consume it, I'm probably tuning out thinking about other things. If I'm taking notes as a example, and then coming up with my own reflective personal stories that map along with whatever that concept is, so I see the concepts at play in my world, there's one way of processing that, right?
Right.
But they need to be taught how to go beyond consuming, but they need to pick what that avenue looks like for them. That's
Right.
coaching, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
So, I mean, really good point, right? I don't read books. I read voraciously when I was in my 20s or 30s, and now I don't have the attention span for that. I don't know if that's old age or what. But the way I learn is through podcasting, right? And what I'm finding is that I meet so many interesting people. I mean, like, I met you on GD LinkedIn, right?
yeah,
For better or for worse, I connected with you on LinkedIn, and I can see that we'll be famous friends, right? Because I have
yeah,
something to learn from you. And likewise, several of the people that I've connected with LinkedIn that I have conversations with now, text conversations, and so I consume information from how other people are different than myself. And so I may not read a book, but I'm hearing all the books that you read through your eyes,
right.
right?
How do you
And
process that stuff, Linda? How do you
what?
process it? So, like, you learn a new, how do you process that to make it part of you? So, like, when you learn something new, what do you do with that aha moment?
Like if I was talking to you and you said something amazing, um, I probably would take it into the next conversation and bring it up and say, Philip Greisen said this, and I kind of agree with him, right? What do you think about
Okay.
this? And so it's kind of like the hive mind, right? The Borg, like we were talking to before we got on
Yeah.
the air.
Yeah.
Um, resistance is futile, you will be assimilated, but not in a bad way, right? Because I think hive mind is can be a great thing in our profession. And I think we do there's a lot more queen bees and king bee, even those king bees don't exist, but queen and king bees that
Too
fight
bad.
for control of the hive mind, when the hive mind should be just that. It should be a living, breathing, vibrating, uh, some people are on the inside, some people are on the outside. In the winter times, this is what bees do, because I used to be a beekeeper, is to keep the queen and all the bees warm. They vibrate inside to outside, right? And they all get a turn in different aspects of the hive, right? And that's how it should be. It shouldn't be somebody controlling the hive. It should be the hive uh, forming its own uh, form. So I know that
Yeah.
gets a little kind of off on the analogy thing, but so I take something from this conversation. I'll listen to it again when I roll it to a podcast, and I'll probably watch it again, and I'll take those into my next conversation. And maybe that's something we can talk about when we do our next live stream, which you're already roped into
Yeah.
doing, hopefully. Um, So I think the takeaway here, at least from the last part of the conversation, is you know, when you go to coach somebody, it's not to make them like yourself, right? And it's not to give them 2 or 3 choices. It's to say you have a choice, right? And be confident that you're either going to fail or you're going to succeed, and either way that's a win. Either way that's a win, right? Because
That's
you've
right.
cut off you've cut off a branch of the tree that you don't have to climb now. You're going to go this way instead of that way, and that's okay. And please, for the love of God, don't make more Lindas, right?
Or Phillips.
Or Phillips. I mean, you know what? I mean, and
Yeah.
we may be great for the right here and now, but when I retire, which will be never because I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, I'll probably die first. But when I retire, if my legacy is that there are a ton of people out there that are better at safety and at being human, and that are tying that string of commonality through everything, then that's a win, right? That's my
Amen.
A. That's my A.
Amen. That's right.
So,
That's
anyways,
right.
so I'm gonna wrap this if that's okay with you, and I'm gonna invite you back for another live stream if you would um, so choose to come back on a live stream with me. Philip, thank you so much for joining me. I find you super intelligent. I love our banter. So thank you for doing this. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for everything you're doing to help everybody in our community.
All right. So this has been Philip Greisen from ProSafe Solutions and the Leaderthink podcast. And I really think maybe I'll even listen to a podcast, right? And I'm going to go and listen to Philip's. And there should be tons of takeaway from today. Thank you for listening to The Safety Struggle. Stay safe and think.
Have a good one.